off. Okay, so now we are officially live streaming. So when you come on, it'll say live streaming, but we're not actually streaming yet until I hit this little button back at YouTube. And then there's a 20-second delay. But so we should actually be on now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so, I had trouble getting Karen into the private group, the cluster 3. And so I've been sending messages to her on Messenger, and usually she replies to stuff. So, I know that she saw it, but I sent her some stuff this morning and I have not gotten a reply. So that's why I'm not sure, if she's up and about or not. But she did tell me she would not be with us next week. So
okay, we'll give her a few minutes. It's just 12:32, so give her a minute or so. And I mean, it's not that if we get started that we can't bring her up to speed also.
Right. So,
man, check this out. I seen a picture of Larry Jr. He's a grown-ass man.
No, that's Larry 3.
All right. Okay. Junior, you know what I was talking about. Larry's kid. The person I know is Larry.
I thought you were asking. Yeah, that's Larry 3.
Dr. Odom.
I know, but my father was Larry 1. My brother is Larry 2. My nephew is Larry 3. And that's all the Larrys.
Make a conversation unnecessarily difficult. Don't you think?
Don't think so.
You know what I was talking about.
I thought I was trying to inject some facts. I don't consider it that difficult. Are you an anti-fact? Are you one of these anti-fact people?
Alternative facts. Alternative facts. That's all I'm saying. There's other facts out there, and you are privy to those other facts.
Yes, my nephew is a grown man. Huh?
But he's got to be 6'3".
6'4". Oh, that's a fact.
God damn. Well, if you just want to start an argument, we can start on something else.
Argumentative. Okay, we can go with 6'3".
No.
And he has 3 children. They're half grown.
Wow. That means you're getting old girl.
And you too, even older.
I mean, you're quick to point that out. You're quick. He's older than I am.
Well, again, I don't want to complicate things with the facts.
Right. Alternative facts. I'm standing on that. Oh my God. And you know you said right, the ones that push you down. There you go. Pick yourself up. Hey, it's 12:34. We give it 12:35 now. Give her another minute, and we can get going.
Yeah, and I'm thinking she may not make it, or she may come in later, because it is odd. I know Karen from my other book group, and she's normally one that comes a few minutes early. Mm-hmm. So I would say she's probably not gonna make it today. So I've got 12:35 on my clock. Do you want to do the welcome?
Okay. Hey, welcome, Michelle. It's beautiful Sunday here. I'm glad to see you on another Sunday. Hopefully your last week was great, prosperous, and effective. Welcome to the group.
Thank you. Here comes Karen.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey.
Hi, how are y'all doing?
I had just given up on you.
I was trying to get in.
Oh.
We didn't give up on you. We just thought you were just going to be a little delayed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we were just now getting started with the welcome.
Okay.
And did you say your name, Leon, and where you're located?
Leon Salter, South Jersey, Blackwood area.
Blackwood area. And I'm Michelle Odom. I'm in Brooklyn, New York. And this is my book. We call this the entrance fee.
Okay.
This is what we're reading. We're reading Begin Again, James Baldwin's America and Its Urgent Lessons for Our Own by Eddie S. Glaude Jr. And tonight we're on today we're on chapter 1, The Lie. And Karen.
And I'm Karen Johnson, joining you from Salt Lake City, and this is my book.
All right. Is that the hardcover you have there?
Yeah, I bought it when it came out. I'm usually running to bookstores when books come out and I get hardcovers.
Okay.
Building that library.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. I prefer paperbacks. I have this is paperback. But for our other book group, the Love Songs, because it's still a new book and the paperback wasn't out at the time that we were starting to read it, I had the hardcover. And it just aggravates me every time I have to read it.
Why?
Yeah.
Because I have to fold the book back and hold it like this, and you can't really do that with a hardcover.
Oh, right.
I don't like the Kindle versions either.
I don't say hate them, but I don't like you. I can't. I don't know. I like to lay back to read, and that I can't lean back in my chair and read. So that's not good. The Kindle is not mine. It's sitting over there.
We sound like a bunch of old people.
Speak for yourself, buddy. Speak for yourself. You're quick to throw somebody on the bus.
So Leon, I'm going to bring him up on my share screen, but Leon wrote a couple of questions, and I wrote a couple of questions.
I'll be right back.
And so why don't we start with Leon's questions? Let me add this. Okay, share screen. Adobe. Okay, y'all can see that now?
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to get us started, Leon?
Okay. Basically, my first Baldwin's understanding of American conditions around a set of practices that taken together constitute something that was referred to as the lie in the book. And my question was, are the conditions that Baldwin was aware of still prevalent today? Are those lie situations still here? I talk about, or I think about our propaganda that was taught to us. Literally, propaganda was given to us in elementary school, middle school, and high school in regards to the development of our country. And that was part of the lie. I mean, either it was complete omission or a lie. You think of the American Indians, think of early Black settlers who went west when the West was opened up. The two world wars that the country fought in, and literally no mention of brown and Black people. Wall Street, that whole thing in Oklahoma, I didn't hear about that until I was out of college. So those situations, are they still prevalent? Can we do anything about it? So that was a question to the group. Is it, in your opinion, is it still prevalent like it was 100 years ago, 60 years ago? Being old, as people have mentioned, you can remember that early 60s time when I remember the statement, Black people are on TV, and how that affect a whole group of people. I mean, you were not seen on TV so infrequently, so it became a big moment, regardless of who that Black person was, to hit TV. Hit TV in some type of entertainment type situation. If Sammy Davis Jr. came on, or Lena Horne, or somebody like that came on, James Baldwin came on, it was, oh, Black people are on TV. Who is this person?
I mean, yeah, I would say it's still prevalent. I'm speaking a little bit hesitantly because, I haven't been inside a classroom in a lot of years. So I don't really know what young people are being taught. But certainly in our current day, there's a lot of activity going around, antagonism toward teaching truth in the public schools. So I don't know how much truth they ever were teaching, but apparently whatever little bit they got around to is now problematic for some people. But I mean, there's still a lot of racism in the world, and and I would say the basis of that is lies. So I mean, I think overall, the key message that I get from this chapter, The Lie, is that we're dealing with a bunch of liars. And we have, we have the example of what's going on in Ukraine right now. And that, I mean, I'm getting kind of a crash course in Russian-Ukraine history, as I imagine many of us are at the moment. But it's a region with a long history and a long history of dispute over, who controls what, who owns what. But lies just seem to be the mechanism. As Dr. Glaude is describing it, the mechanism by which, some really outrageous things are allowed to happen or are justified. So we see it in Ukraine. We've been dealing with the big lie, here since November 2020. So they're just all over the place, with regard to race, with regard to politics, all over the place.
Mm-hmm. On page 7, the main paragraph, where the second paragraph, where it says, Baldwin's understanding of the American condition coherent around a set of practices that taken together constitutes something I would refer to throughout the book as the lie. The idea of facing the lie was always at the heart of Jimmy's witness, because he thought that it, as opposed to our claim to the shining city on the hill, was what made America truly exceptional. The lie is more properly several sets of lies with a single purpose. If what I have called the value gap is the idea that in America, white lives have always mattered more than the lives of others, then the lie is a broad and powerful architecture of false assumptions by which the value gap is maintained. These are the narrative assumptions that support the everyday order of American life, which means we breathe them like air, we count them as truth, we absorb them into our character. One of the things that I appreciate in this piece is how Glaude does an analysis of Jimmy Baldwin in terms of his strong belief early on that this country would change and would give rise to a socially democratic, morally just society. But one thing that I think in reading this piece, and also reflecting on how Glaude is analyzing Jimmy Baldwin so far when I'm reading, is that if we in this nation don't critique the fact that this nation was built on the genocide of the indigenous peoples, right? So the lie is, the Indians came, we came, had Thanksgiving, they gave us the land. Of course, that's the lie, right? Where this political system was developed on the genocide of an indigenous people who are still left on reservations, struggling to survive. Life expectancy is 40 years old, right? And so if we don't wrestle with that, we are going to continue to have the situations that we are having in terms of conflict. This is also a nation that was built on, its economic capitalism was built on the backs of enslaved people for over 200 something years. We have yet in this nation to apologize. And to apologize is to acknowledge that. So we're still dealing with a lie because we have yet to apologize. And not only do we have yet to apologize, we have yet to provide reparations. So it's to apologize, acknowledge, and provide reparations. But yet we are continue to live in a lie. One thing that this piece doesn't do is that it does not unpack the structural foundations of this nation, of capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy. That is the foundation of this nation. But we continue to live in the lie that we are a truly democratic nation that believe in freedom and democracy, and we want to save the world, until we understand that this nation has blood on its hands because it has engaged in genocide of indigenous peoples and have yet to apologize about that. And also a nation that continues to not honor the treaties that it had put forth between this nation and indigenous peoples. We are going to continue to wrestle with a lie. If we do not deal with the fact that this is not a nation of immigrants, this is a nation with indigenous peoples on this land. This is a nation that was built by African people. We're going to continue to have the problems that we have. And then going to Ukraine, and I really, when I think about Black folks, I think that we do need to pray, because war is profit. War displaces people. War kills people, right? So we do need to pray. But I look at the hypocrisy where we don't have this outcry when Israel bombed the Pakistan people. We don't have this outcry when the US bombs Somalia last week and continue to bomb. So we didn't have this outcry when the first Black president overthrows Libya, because Gaddafi was trying to have a united African nation, continent, right? And we don't cry when the US is involved in a conflict in Yemen or Syria. So why should we believe that the US want to get all involved in Ukraine and talk about democracy when you got to deal with your own hypocrisies in this nation? Yeah, we continue to deal with the lie. And until we deal with 500 years of white supremacy in this nation in a serious manner, we are going to continue to function under the lie. And one of the words that is used in Gramsci used this word. He was a socialist, Italian socialist, and he used the term hegemony. And that's what we're seeing when we see politicians get on television and say, oh, Putin is a madman. We need to go over here and save these people. We buy into the hegemony. That's the lie, right? That's the myth, or et cetera. And so hegemony is the appropriate word. And you use the word, Leon, propaganda. That's what it is. It is propaganda. And so the propaganda bamboozle a lot of us in terms of buying into the lie.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And
Dr. Karen, you don't accept Bill Clinton's apology for slavery? What do you think about that?
Oh, yeah, I do remember that Bill Clinton did try. In fact, that was the first time when he tried to have a national conversation about race and racism. And I do appreciate any policies or laws like recently there was, so I do appreciate that attempt, but at the same time, he was a walking contradiction, yes. Right? He was a walking contradiction in terms of with this whole policy around aid. I don't like to use welfare, but aid for dependent children, mothers with dependent children, and how he slashed those funds for these women. That put these women in a worse condition than what they were. You know, I was an adjunct professor at Compton Community College during this time frame, and I was teaching a women's studies class for young women. This is for young women. It was monies that were funded for women who were single and had children. And the purpose of them being in this community college was to gain skills. Do you know I lost my students when that policy came into place? Because now they were forced to go to these, whatever that he was doing. I think they had to go to job fairs and what have you.
Welfare to work.
Yeah.
Right. And so
welfare to work. Yeah, exactly. That's what it was called.
So that what was it?
Welfare to work.
Oh, right. So that interfered with these women trying to go to college. That stopped their college education. So he did a lot of things, like even with this whole thing with Ukraine. In the 1990s, when the Soviet Union broke up, NATO and the US were said to after they broke up, they promised Russia. They promised it was no longer the former Soviet Union, that NATO would not expand and grab up these other Eastern European nations and put military bases on the borders where Russia, what we have now have Russia, that threatens the sovereignty of Russia. When NATO put its war machines on these Eastern European nations and have them be part of that, that's a threat. And that's what we're dealing with today, is this threat to the sovereignty. I'm not apologizing for what Putin has done in terms of invading Ukraine, which has been in centuries of conflict. with Tsar Russia,
Right.
Soviet Union, and now Russia, right? These are the same people.
Right.
But they have centuries of trying to be a sovereign nation. But getting back to Bill Clinton, is that these were broken promises. There was a promise that NATO would not expand, or the US would not put military bases on the borders of these former Soviet Union countries. This is a promise that
we're dealing with liars.
And so there's a history of that, right? There's a history, and we're bamboozled into, that's why I say hegemony is an appropriate term, into thinking, oh, so we could go along with the get along, and in fact, it's nothing but the lie. And it's dangerous.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say about Ukraine also, what we're seeing is some of the news people that have actually said things like their horror is that these are Europeans doing this. Their horror is that these are white people doing this. And
white
so they
people.
said
that's what they were saying, white people.
They said stuff like, oh, you would expect this in Africa, Middle East, but oh my God, this is Europe,
Right. And that was where that's the way I seen some of the same reporting. Revealing
that they are victims of the lie. If you're carrying the belief that it's okay for those other people to become refugees, to have their children and their homes bombed, that's okay. But when it happens to Europeans, then, oh my God, let's pull out all the stops. We've got to really deal with this because now we're dealing with a human problem, So then you've bought the lie.
Right. And the lie has been around for such a long time. For such a long time. Dr. Karen spoke about, the Indians, that whole engagement with the Indians. The treaties were written on, might as well have been written on with invisible ink. Nobody honors the treaties. Well, the United States doesn't honor the treaties. And the Indians are stuck with whatever they can get out of it. But nobody, no president or Congress has steadily honored the treaty. Just haven't. That whole pipeline thing was all through Indian land.
We're dealing with a bunch of liars. Also, what's going on in Ukraine right now is, they supposedly had a ceasefire. So have had a couple of ceasefires.
Yeah, right.
So that some people could get out. But they're not honoring them. Right. And so it's I know that this book is focused on the US and the particular experience of African Americans. But so much of this is really universal. It's really behavior that we can see playing out on the global stage.
Right. When it plays out and you kind of say, oh, that happened to us, or oh, I'm familiar with this, and watch out for the bamboozle because it's coming. It's coming. And with that, with Dr. King, Malcolm X, and a few started asking, they never said, well, give me something extra. They just asked for what white America was getting. Mm-hmm. So do you believe, based off what we just said, that the lie is in place, it's embedded, it's here? Would asking for the same as white America ever happen?
Well, I think, again, one of the reasons why we're still dealing with this lie is because we're still dealing with 500 years of a white power structure, right? Of 500 years of white supremacy that is determined to hold on to its power base, not only in the US, and the US is a very powerful nation on this planet with over 800 military bases all around, surrounding every nation on this country, on this planet. And NATO is also another powerful base. And so it is interconnected. It is interconnected. The same forces that gave rise to colonization and then enslavement and the transatlantic slave trade are still in place. And so thus we are still dealing with these forces today. And so until it is dismantled, we will continue to wrestle with. And so that's part of the struggle. And so we can't think that we can appeal to the moral compass of a group, a powerful force that is about that. Is not about that. Is not. I'm very disappointed in the president and his speech on Tuesday, his State of the Union speech, because he's marched.
I mean, the one where he threw black folk under the bus.
Right, and not dealing with the what he campaigned on.
Right.
Okay, so we are at a point where he's not addressing that. He don't need to address that. He could really just engage in this warmongering stuff, because now, and so that reveals to us your true spirit, where your true spirit is. That is, anybody who's a president of this country is about upholding white supremacy. It is about upholding the power structure that this nation has, right? Maintaining its power force and its 800 bases around the world. And so that's what we're up against. And that we can't be bamboozled into thinking, oh, we could appeal to their moral compass and then we will get the justice that we deserve in this nation, or that the African nations would not be exploited or bombed by the US or European nations. No, they're going to hold on to they're holding on, but we have to, I want to hold on to hope. I'm getting to the point, like when I was reading about Baldwin, the older you get and the more you see that you lose your sense of faith and hope. But we have to continue to hold on hope, because even with the Moors, when they colonized Europe, Spain and Portugal and Italy for 700 years, that's a long time to colonize, but they were overthrown. And so I'm just thinking, well, we go through forces. The US is on the decline. Capitalism is dying. And I think that's one of the reasons why we got this war also. So we have to hold on to hope that it dies, but something much more powerful that give rise to justice, that give rise to reparations and human rights for the rest of us who have been subjected to this, our ancestors who have been subjected to this for 500 years. Am I making sense?
Do you see anything on the horizons that would represent that? Because at present, I don't see anything that represents that on the horizon. And it's going to just take years of slight changes in order to get to the promised line.
I'm actually pessimistic, to be honest. I try not to say that. And when I teach my students, I always try to give them hope. At this point,
I'm going to give you some hope.
Thank you.
Hope, that's for sure.
I know, that's my job. That's my job. I mean, I would say, who was it? Is it Frederick Douglass that said power concedes nothing?
Right.
Without a struggle, without struggle.
Without a war. But power does not come away easy. It's not.
And right. However, the hope is that the world is getting smaller. From the time that we were separated by vast stretches of land on the plantation, to the separations that we have from, Africans. Technology is making the world smaller. And I guess I've always, I grew up moving all over the country. And one thing that was always interesting to me is that how each region has a particular culture, has a particular body of knowledge. I remember when I moved as an adult to Kansas City, and they were celebrating Juneteenth. Well, coming from the East Coast, I had never heard of Juneteenth. This was late 80s. Now, of course, Juneteenth is, what did they make it a national holiday or something recently? Because people now know about it. But it's been around for a long time. But depending on where you're located, as they say, location matters. But depending on where you're located, you know or you don't know certain things. And so as technology makes the world smaller, I think we will have an opportunity to kind of speed up the learning curve, to kind of get more of us on the same page. And so, Russia, again, for example, has shut down a lot of the independent media in the country because clearly Vladimir Putin understands that if certain ideas get out there and travel too widely, he's going to have a problem controlling his people. And so we can't underestimate the power of ideas and the power of teaching each other. I hope you find some hope in that.
So each one teach one, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, did we look at your second question, Leon? You want to do that one?
Not yet.
You want to do that one?
Okay. Can you throw it up on the screen?
Yeah.
And print them out.
There it is.
Basically, the passage that that Doc Karen read, and my question is the author shedding light on moments in our history that were missed opportunities where the focus could have been changed from a racist country to a more equal inclusion type place. So some of the things that Eddie brought out in regards to things that had happened, civil rights, Reconstruction, if we would have focused or demanded, I'm not sure if we even had the power to make the demands, but if the focus would have been more on inclusion, or if Blacks, indigenous people said, no, we're not going for this, would it have changed things in America? It just looks like time after time, I won't call them opportunities, but there's been crossroads in the United States development where we could have changed from a racist country to a more democratic country. And do we think those opportunities are going to come in the future? Because as we talked earlier in this conversation, opening up the books is just not enough. It's just not enough to see. I think we all knew, most of us, we all knew about police violence, poor schooling, poor health situation. But now with the as Michelle said, technology, it brings it into everybody's home. If you happen to be a person of color with a good job, benefits and things of that nature, you're kind of making the assumption that if anybody goes out and apply, they should be able to get those same resources. But that's not always the case. The situation is built up against you. For being out on the street, they're down in the South, Mississippi, Alabama, and those places, during the 50s and the early 60s, just hanging around on the streets to get you locked up because they needed people to work in the fields. They needed people to do that manual labor. So being, in Detroit or Chicago, when the boom, when people migrated up there for the good paying jobs, the same opportunities weren't in the South. The same opportunities weren't in parts of some of our major cities. Hell, man, you could have a guy going to GM to work and another guy stuck in a prison pipeline, just going in, because when Clinton, as we talked about earlier, privatized a lot of the prison. Most prisons are privately owned now. They are money generators. They're not there to hold a criminal in. They're there to make money. So regardless if you're innocent or not, if you're there because of being a political prisoner, you're in jail and the state pays so much per head. Mm-hmm. So do we think, one, that it was missed opportunities in the past? Somehow we the ball slipped out of our hands, and we got Black Lives Matter out here. We have other rallying calls, and could that or will that be the opportunity to make America more just?
So I like the fact that Glaude talks about the backlash when there are opportunities, when there's a march towards making it a much more socially just democratic society, then comes the backlash. And also Ibram X. Kendi also talks about that in his book Stamped from the Beginning, a history of racism in the US, where he also shows that. And so one of the first opportunities this nation had was during the Reconstruction period. That was one of the time frames where there was a commitment on the part of this government to move towards helping. Not only just was it because it was a time period that was trying to help the formerly enslaved Africans to get on their feet with a variety of housing, land, education, etc., and with laws and policies that were put into place, like laws and policies that allowed them to be citizens because they were not considered citizens, laws and policies that allowed Black men to vote over women, regardless of what
white or Black.
Right, white or Black. Right. And so you saw this commitment during that time frame, during the Reconstruction period, that was a period where there was, and it was a period that was hope for, and it was a period of hope for the formerly enslaved folks. And there was a period in which just laws were coming into existence. But then comes the backlash to that. And that backlash when President Hayes gets into office in the 1870s, and he promised this, the people in this nation, basically the white people and the formerly enslavers, that if you vote for me, I will return this nation to what it once was. And so then it becomes a nadir in the historical experience that Black folks encountered. But the point I'm making is that the Reconstruction period was one of the first time frames where you see that commitment to justice, racial justice, because not only did African people benefit from the policies that were put into place in terms of land, in terms of education, it was and you also had Black folks, as you all know, who were part of the government, right, in the South, who were congressmen, right? And then you had Pinchback, who was the Black superintendent of schools in Louisiana. So it was these formerly enslaved folks who had a vision of democracy and hope for a better nation that more than their white counterparts, right? And so it was the formerly enslaved Africans who pushed forth and advocated a state public school system. And so that not only did that benefit the African folks, that benefited the white folks.
Right. Everybody. It benefited everybody. Everybody who was middle class or poor, it benefited.
Right. It benefited them. So it benefited everyone in this nation. And the policies that these Black politicians during that time frame who were in Congress benefited everybody. So that was the time frame that I see that was the first time that it could have been a
missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With those missed opportunities.
Glaude talks about after the Revolutionary War, after Reconstruction, and after the Obama presidency, as times when America could have taken another path. But I think in terms of the learning curve, at some point we should learn that just because things look up for a while, we should anticipate that there is going to be backlash. And I know Glaude wants to stop calling it backlash, but that's the word on the tip of my tongue. We should anticipate, again, that power is not going to concede anything easily. And so from a learning curve perspective, I think that we have to figure out what our strategies are going to be when that inevitable backlash period comes around. So in terms of, your question about did we drop the ball? Did we miss the opportunity? I mean, I think for those of us, like our generation, that kind of came into adulthood after the 60s. I think that there's more that our generation could have and should have been doing. But at the same time, I think that we also had to learn whatever it is we had to learn. And so what I mean by that is, as we were coming into adulthood, it appeared that opportunities were opening up for Black Americans. Some Black people were able to, get decent positions, move into the middle class, yada, yada. And so I think that we had to learn that just because they let a few through does not mean the floodgates are open.
Oh, yeah,
does not mean that everybody's walking through. Right. And so what does our commitment, that image of reaching back to take the one left behind, what do the people who get the opportunities? In fact, you know what? I want to go to one of my questions because I think it kind of gets at this. Let me share screen. Share. Yeah. So this is question 8. This picture right here is Tedworth Square. I'm not sure if it's actually Baldwin's home at Tedworth Square in London, but you know how he described Baldwin being in this quaint little house in London. So question 8, Baldwin, in between relationships at the time, was in a quaint house in London working on a novel. Baldwin was disturbed on hearing Stokely's passport had been confiscated and set out to write an essay in Carmichael's defense. He addressed the history of the movement and what had happened to many of its young people. He charted the nature of the betrayal and its devastating effects. Baldwin's rage was now in full view. The London Times and the New York Times both refused to publish the essay, finished just after the New Year, 1968. The Black Power essay did run, however, in the Manchester Guardian and in February in the Los Angeles Free Press. Baldwin's essay in defense of Stokely Carmichael also assessed the quest for Black freedom in this country and what he viewed as the shattering of Dr. King's dream. He sought to understand what happened after the collapse of the civil rights movement, the emergence of Black power, the significance of the rise of the Black middle class and the so-called Black underclass, and the scope of white America's commitment to resist fundamental change. Question, what do you see as the significance of the Black middle class and the so-called Black underclass in the quest for freedom, justice, and equality? And I did find the actual essay, Baldwin's essay called A Letter to Americans. So there's a link there for that. So yeah, I mean, I think as I was saying that I think the middle class and the underclass do play different roles, but there should be a symbiotic relationship to us. And I think that in future periods of progress, that's what we have to get better about. And I think they were better about it in earlier generations. You know, I mean, I think coming out of slavery, they understood that they had to go back and, you know, pick up their brethren and sistren. Right. And somehow we lost that knowledge, but we can't afford to lose that knowledge.
I think, Michelle, even past the slavery, as people migrated north, as Blacks migrated north, they still would go back home, send money home. The connection stayed to, you know, let's call going north, better job, better education, better. But they went back home, or they sent the kids down there for the summer. So the connection stayed. So you're right. There's a part that the middle class or the up and coming middle class or the working class, along with grandmom and them that were left home, who got some of the severe treatment from racism, you know, so no education or poor education, poor health services. So, but the connection was still there. You would send something down there to make sure these people were doing as well as could be provided for them at the time. And I think, let's call it, our generation somehow lost the linkage.
Yeah. But also, I mean, you know, there's some things that we can do collectively and some things that I think we have to do individually. You know, nobody's going to come into the bathroom and wipe your ass for you. Well, maybe if you're in a nursing home, they might.
Probably the last place somebody do that for you.
but some things. And so, you know, so when I think about this, a mutuality between the Black middle class and so-called Black underclass, that I think that we have to figure out that piece. Nobody wants to just send you money and they don't feel like you are doing what you can do as an individual to improve your life. So we have to deal with the things that divide us, that the internal conflicts that cause us to not understand and not work well between the classes in the Black community.
Self-hate, you're hating yourself at that point. And yes, somehow that, there has to be some healing in that process. Some type of, we have been traumatized for hundreds of years. And I don't think that's been addressed publicly or privately. We as a people were kind of denied any type of mental health. We just, no mental health. And we have been traumatized by every aspect of our government. So,
and and I also know from personal experience that there are a lot of problems that we have that are not visible to the eye. Yes. I have a chronic health condition. You wouldn't know it to look at me. I'm still cute, right, Leon? But there's a plethora of chronic health conditions that affect people in so many ways that are not visible to the eye. And so I think a lot of times if somebody doesn't have a broken leg or a bullet through the gut, then we think they must be faking. We think they must be lazy. We begin to articulate all of the stereotypes about Black people, the lies that we have heard toward each other. And so, but it's a complex thing. I understand why it's difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult, but we, even when there is the broken leg, there is the obvious symptoms. The overall system still belittled us. You've seen what happened. Now, opioid addiction affected white America. And now we need counseling, drug treatment. We need all these things. Crack affected Black and brown people. Lock their asses up. Throw away the key. Don't give them a second chance. Anything, you can't vote, you can't go public housing, you can't do nothing. So it's how the system dealt with similar problems kind of fed us a certain narrative. So then when some relative comes to us and say, hey, I am this, no, because you have been indoctrinated with this lie. Here again. And
again, I got to go to the international for an example of that. I mean, we see the welcome centers, the aid pouring in from all over the world.
They send sandwiches from Philadelphia to Ukraine. Can you believe that?
They're taking out renting Airbnbs so that the landowner, the landowners can keep up it's
amazing.
And meanwhile, when some Haitians try to roll up in here, they get the lash.
Right. Send them out and put them back on the boat. Put them back on the boat. I don't care if it floats or not. You got to go. Exactly.
Right. Come into the richest country in the world and they get the lash.
Right. And we throw away more than certain countries consume, but we don't have enough for a certain group of people. And that imaging and that messaging has been poured into us for years. So when someone comes to us, we go right back to the tape and, this is what I say. This is what I do. No, I can't help you. No. You've been standing on this corner for 20 years, Junie. I can't do nothing for you. Why can't you get a job, Junie? Then when you start digging, you know,
right.
these.
Meanwhile, for all of the role that the U.S. plays in destabilizing South and Central America, and then when their people try to come,
right, and then no, you can't stay here. No,
y'all can't come in here.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, you can't. You M19, MX19. You know, you a thug. You are a criminal.
So when you ask, you know, did we drop the ball? Is there something else we should have done? I just think we have to always remind ourselves that we really are dealing with very, very complex social, political, economic dynamics, and less time blaming ourselves and more time, you know, just figuring out, all right, how do we unravel this piece of the nasty little knot we're caught up in?
Right. Yeah. I think, you know, after reading it and writing the question, then you start questioning. I question myself. Is this the right? Do we lose the ball because do we lose the focus? No, I think the goal was moved. You know, they promised one thing, but then they moved the goal. You know, 40 acres and a mule, and all that didn't happen. So, you know, then they had, okay, you can go to school, but then, you know, it was separate but not equal. And then it was white flight. And then the money went with white flight. You know, no, who cares if white folks leave? But the money left. So, you know, that was the big issue.
Karen wants to say something. You say something, Karen, and I will be right back, okay?
So just addressing your question, Michelle, about the something about the role of the middle class to the underclass. So one thing I do want to say is that there is a long legacy of African Americans in this country, starting mutual aid societies and benevolent societies from the time of the antebellum period to help the enslaved and then the newly freed, et cetera. So we have a long legacy of helping those who are a little bit more privileged in terms of class, have a long legacy of all of these organizations that helped our people. And one of the reasons is because we want to help our people, but secondly, because it's that interrelationship, understanding that middle class Black folks, even if it was during the time of the antebellum period, knew that they could not survive without their other brothers who also were oppressed. They saw the interrelationship. Secondly, this government did not have the social service programs that it has today. So you had Black women, particularly during the 19th century, who had continuing the tradition of activism and mutual aid societies, et cetera, who engaged in all sorts of social services program and went to the federal government to institute these programs, be it developing hospitals or schools or orphanages or settlement houses. So we have that legacy, and that's important that I wanted to say, is we do have that legacy. One of the things that we need in terms of middle class Black folks, uplifting the so-called underclass, because they believe that that was part of their moral obligation to do so. So that's important to understand that history and legacy of Black activism from the antebellum period through the 19th century, et cetera, and the role that Black women have played in these, because it was believed that it was Black women, because they were women, to uplift the race, right? And but when we look at the time of integration into the society, we lost our organizations, and then we are integrating. This is a consumer corporate capitalist society, where this society pushes the idea of the individual. And it pushes the idea that it's very important to consume goods as opposed to engaging in uplifting our brothers in and fighting for a socially just society. Is always about consumerism. And I think it is that idea that that's where we are now, or just being consumers and losing that legacy that we had as a people of uplifting and providing those resources that we needed to survive as a people.
Doc, during the time when these groups were more active, let's say late 50s, early 60s, how did that information get distributed among the masses of Blacks and brown people?
Right, because the middle-class Black folks during the time of Jim Crow were also living in the same communities as the poor Blacks. And so not only were they living in these communities, you know the people, you know their aspirations. They're attending the churches, they're going to the beauty shops and the barber shops, and going to the same grocery stores. So again, it's that interrelationship. And then the churches were always used as a bulwark against Jim Crow and other forms of racial violence. And so these ideas were, and then plus they were in the communities, established benevolent organizations in these same communities that middle class and low income Blacks were living. Like if you were to go to, and I know that this nation is highly gentrified, like in Washington, D.C., we've seen it in Harlem, et cetera, or even in Atlanta, where in Atlanta around the AU Center, like Morris Brown, there was a wealthy Black family, the Herndon's family. They lived in the same communities as the so-called underclass Black folks. So we all lived together because of Jim Crow. Right. And then in Washington, D.C., you had the Lerdirt Park section where you had middle-class Black folks living in their brownstones. You go there now, and that wasn't far from Howard University. You go there now, is gentrified with white hipsters, right? And so we lived in these communities. We went to the same churches and schools, et cetera. So we were there. And we understood that our relationships were interrelated. And then it was that ethos of that we have to uplift our people, because that's the only way that we are going to survive in this society that is bent on destroying us.
So it's summarizing, it sounds like just getting back together, almost through osmosis, some of this other stuff will just happen because of being together. You know, so if the upper middle class, the middle class, working class, everybody's kind of somehow together. So you kind of see the person who's a teacher, the guy who's a lawyer, the lady who's a doctor. So as a young African-American, you can kind of say, these are obtainable positions for me also.
Right, but I think the key thing to that is that we are at a point where a lot of our people have bought into the idea of individualism, materialism, and consumerism. And so, and also that whiteness is a privilege, and we prefer to be, like if you go into middle-class Black communities in Atlanta, in DC, et cetera, those Black folks today do not want to live around low income because they buy into this classist idea, right? And they did during that other time frame. Or they don't want to send their children to the all Black school that is, and you might have a middle class Black community or neighborhood, right? And I could think of one where the community that my brother lives in, right? Upper middle class Black folks who don't want to send their child to the neighborhood public school. And the public school is, I believe in public school for the common good, because it allows for democracy. But these people don't want to send, my brother and his wife, they send their kids to the public school. And so his children are interacting with lower income children. Nicole Hannah Jones talks about that as well, sending her child to the public school, where you could pay money to not send it, because we buy into the assumption that something is inherently wrong. We don't buy into that if we invest, our tax dollars pay for those public schools. We need to be actively involved, and we need to make sure that our children are getting the same kind of resources that they would get in Atlanta, in an area called Buckhead or something like that.
Right.
And so that's the problem where we are dealing with. We're so brainwashed in a society of being very materialistic and consuming and buying into the hegemony that we need to overthrow Russia or whatever, or overbomb Somalia, that we don't understand that it's not about us, it's about all of us on this planet. It's about all of our people, our Black people in our community, to make it better for all of us, not for that individual person.
Thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. You're absolutely right. I think yeah. But you can see it, Michelle, because when we grew up, you figure in that neighborhood, most people could pay, send their kids somewhere other than Junior 3 or Trenton High. And we went to those schools, and I think I did well. But now, as things are changing in Trenton, those kids will be going to Sacred Heart, some Catholic school or a private school, because of the separation. And then you just don't get anything. Yeah, synergism of life experiences don't happen when everybody's got similar experiences here, and everybody over here has got similar experiences, and the two groups never meet. Never shall they meet. And then, as Doc said,
I mean, the lie has been that
I have to go, but I really enjoyed this. And I won't be available next Sunday because I'll be out of town, but I'll be back the following Sunday. So thank you so much again. I enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
All right, great. Safe travels. Yes, be safe.
You.
All right, see you in 2 weeks.
All right.
I mean, a part of the lie is that we were not qualified. So you can't get this job because you don't have this certification. You don't have this license. You don't have this degree. So we went out and we got the licenses and the certifications and the degrees.
And the degrees. We got it.
Only to find that the rules changed. Well, now you need the degree plus.
Right. And now it looks like now, Michelle, is going back to the old Jim Crow rules. We ain't hiring you.
Period.
Not gonna call you what you have. Right. I don't care what you got.
We're watching this play out with Katanji.
Oh, aren't we? And then some of the dumbest white people you see will say, well, what's her LSAT? You some bitch. What? You don't even know what the LSAT's rate. So
right.
But not to say, after he says this and somebody, you start seeing on Twitter and Facebook, she did the Harvard Law Review. She graduated from undergraduate cum laude. She graduated from law school, summa cum laude. So you knucklehead, but that's how emboldened they came from our former president's bullshit that he fed us.
But we go from Barack Obama to Donald Trump. We reject Hillary Clinton in favor of Donald Trump.
Right.
So your qualifications really, that was always a lie. That you needed all these qualifications to do various jobs.
There have been, going back to the Supreme Court, there's been about 15 men that didn't have law degrees that were on the Supreme Court. So it's never been about qualification. It's never been about qualification. It's never been. No.
Right.
Never, when they're telling you can't fill holes in the street, it's never been about qualification. But
that was a polite way.
Holes in the street.
That was a polite way of saying what they didn't want to have to say directly, which is, we ain't hiring you. We don't care what you bring.
Right, exactly. We don't care. We're not hiring you. Now, come forward to present day, they need our economic dollars. So here, therefore, long as you spend money with us, you don't want to live with us, you can't live with us, and we keep you under a certain thumb, pressure point, you're okay. And I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but if the police officer decides to pull you over for bullshit traffic stop and shoot you, so be it. If you get sick and the doctors in the hospital give you some bullshit treatment and put you back out on the street, so be it. So, and that's some of the lies that one of my questions was, are there going to be opportunities in the future? And I don't know. Nobody knows that, but more opportunities under the same circumstances shouldn't change. It'll be what happened during Reconstruction, what happened during the Civil Rights, what happened to Black Lives Matter. The message is going to be changed because of these mega companies changing our message. And as we said earlier, our synergism has been lost. We don't communicate with each other well. We communicate with, it's almost like you and Doc had said, it's individualism. You're going to talk to like-minded people. So, the communication is easier because based off hearing what the other person said and vice versa, you guys got the same type of vibe going on. So it's going to be real easy. You're not worrying about, oh man, what we going to do? We're going to eat. We're going to cut the lights on. All these shit might not be happening in your life. Mm-hmm. But this group of people over here, that's their day-to-day existence. And, very overhanded with the police, you speak the King's English. So when, the police pull you over, well, excuse me, what have I done? Blah, blah, blah. Let's let this bitch go because she seems to know the rhetoric. And now somebody else, man, I ain't beefing with you like that. Why are you fucking with me? Oh, we got one and we getting ready to roll his ass up. Right. Put him in front of the television. So Juan Paul Kelly when Iowa said that nigga needed an ass. He needed an ass whooping. So there you go.
Let me I did a picture. I do pictures all the time, so but I wanted to do this one because he's going to use this frame of the lie. Mm-hmm. For the rest of the book. So I just kind of took what I got out of that paragraph where he describes it as lies to debase Black people and lies on American history equal the lie. Right. And the lie is all about maintaining the value gap, right, and avoiding the truth.
Right. And I think one of the things as a group of people, we got to understand we can chew gum and talk, walk, and do more than one thing at one time. See, they're trying to paint this picture that Martin Luther King was the only thing going on at the time. And we know that wasn't the case. You had SNCC, you had Stokely, you had Malcolm, you had Fannie out there. You had a lot of people, and even though Ralph Bunche was in King's advisory group, but he had things going on. So but the lie and how they stole King's message and turned it into just wait your turn messaging is a lie. But King was talking about a lot of things at one time. And that's where somehow we lost it. When people talk, the only thing I had a dream, they don't talk about, anything else, the boycotts and the focusing on companies that wouldn't hire us. Why he got killed in Memphis was because of the garbage man strike. He wasn't down in Memphis, preaching a sermon about, I had a dream. It was down there because the garbage men strike. And those pieces are being lost.
And his opposition to the Vietnam War.
Oh, that was a hot one there. Because, but Johnson fell out behind the Vietnam War. That they fell out behind the Vietnam War, and and then now you got to understand, you got Muhammad Ali running around talking about, look, Viet Cong did nothing to me, but this white guy beat my ass every chance he gets. So it was a lot going on. And what happens is the major media, white media, kind of, okay, let's reform this. And that has been, from time and eternity, a trick, the messaging, because you can't take over a country and get everybody to agree with you now just because you took them over forcefully. Okay, so you got to start sending out messages.
But one thing that's interesting to me, and I have always considered myself a truth seeker, but what I have learned is that really beliefs matter more than truth. That people act on their beliefs.
Right.
Whether their beliefs are correct or incorrect, true or untrue, they act on their beliefs. And there's a lot of brain science research on this question of truth and beliefs, and where it's like belief is like the default mechanism in the brain. It's just much easier to accept something, to deal in beliefs versus facts. And so as we live in this age of alternative facts, and all of this
in beliefs instead of facts, because facts need verification. You have to verify a fact. In order for it to be a fact, it has to be scientifically verified or somehow verify that this is a fact. Just because I say I can fly, your mind is saying prove it. But we're better than everybody else. Makes you feel good, and you believe that.
Right.
We go. I mean, but
that's real true.
Right. See, you taking the bricks too far. This is friendly, but you're right. You're absolutely right, and that's where we have to. I don't know. Well, I guess we all just getting together, having these conversations, is a fact that we are at least. It's 3 of us here in the United States that are conscious of our situation. Now, that in itself, let's call it a victory. And then what did we do with that afterwards? And then you say, well, Leon, I got a little group that meets on this day, so that's 3 more, so we got 6. And you keep going and going, and you say, well, okay, well, next book I'll do it with somebody else. And say, hey, Michelle, after that book group we had, we came up with something else, and I got 3 more. So you can drop in when you want to. I'm going to keep this one going, but I got 6 over here. And that's the hope. That's the clarification of the facts. I am in the next chapter, the witness. So I did it without having an audience that when I get slashed my lashes, what are you doing? We don't talk about this now. So Harry Leviton, I can say I'm reading the witness now. So,
I started reading it too, so there.
So I guess the hope is always there, Now, like what brought Baldwin back was, I guess, hope. When he seen Dorothy Counts go through what she went through. And, how can you as a governor or someone that is there representing the people said, I don't want anything to be discussed or talked about that makes someone else feel uncomfortable. How did that little girl feel trying to get into school? And people are spitting on her. White parents are spitting on her. I think we need to bring that up every chance we get. I mean, with Black History Month, it ain't about singing and dancing. Let's talk about the hard times. And hopefully you feel uncomfortable because, and they should think that we're gonna give you what you gave us. I mean, feel uncomfortable. Hopefully I can kiss up so this man don't beat the hell out of me down the line. And I think we need to make him feel uncomfortable. The truth is not a comfort situation. The truth is the truth. So, you know, the kids in Arkansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, you know, she was in Charlotte, but anywhere, Boston was one of the worst as far as desegregation. And that was in the 70s. I mean, Boston was one of the worst. I mean, they're just beating everybody, just out of control, and nobody went to jail.
Black folks have their own reasons and ways of avoiding truth. Because as you said, it's not a comfort situation. No, you know, it a lot of times the truth is hard, it's ugly, it's painful. You know, so it's really a human thing to want to avoid those painful memories. And I may be a little further in the next chapter, because what we learned, see, I'm going to tell it, is that Baldwin incorrectly recalled his memory. Right. Is that his memory is that it was the girl that the image of the girl that caused him to decide to come back to the U.S. from France. And
he's saying, no, that was 15 years. It was almost a 15-year gap. So, okay. Yeah. That Baldwin's memory was a trauma memory. Right. You know, and that trauma causes our memory to be cloudy. Right. And Black memories are trauma as a group. Because when you stand there and you watch Willie Lee get beat by the police in the street, and, you know, or Tomalog or Baldy Goss, or these are guys I grew up with. And the police, they had, you know, being drunk in the street did not, Tomalog or Thomas Turner shouldn't have got beat like he did on Steamboat Street because he was drunk. And, you know, I'm traumatized. I mean, I watched this kid get beat. I mean, he wasn't much older than I was. I maybe 13, 14 years old. So, but he's getting beat because he's just drunk in the street. So, yeah, as a group of people, we have a traumatic memory, and certain things you just don't want to see it again. It comes when you sleep. So when you in REM sleep and these memories just start coming up, you can't control, you can't suppress them anymore. You're seeing these beatings, you're seeing these lynchings, you're seeing these horrific situations. Don't worry about it. Calm down, lady. Calm down, mister. And as they beat your son, your daughter, your husband, your sister, they're beating this person and they're telling you to calm down. That's police violence. And then they took our message about police violence and called defund the police. It was police violence. Hold them accountable. You know, take away that qualified immunity. Yeah, hell. I mean, when you got a guy with a high school diploma and you giving him the power of the state to kill you, you think that's a fucking enough? Yeah, well, you got to go a little further into this thing and know. I mean, and all you got is bullies with some of these police officers. They're just bullies. Can you imagine if Black police officers were killing white boys at the rate that white police officers kill Black boys? No. Wouldn't be one on the parade. Wouldn't be one on the force. Not one. You gotta go, bro. So just like that Bridgewater situation, whatever that one up in North Jersey, and they're trying to sweep that under the rug. I mean, sit down, simmer down, boy, and let's beat this nigga over here. So, I mean, and trauma had us call her Karen. Trauma has us call him Kent. You know, they're white bigots. But in order to get through your day, the next time you see a white person, you don't run off screaming because I don't know what's going to happen. You know, Jesse Mollett, the kid in Chicago.
From Empire.
Right. But a lot of his charges stem around false police report. Now, Karen in in New York at Central Park when the black guy said, hey, I just want to watch birds. Your dog is fucking up the bird watching. Nothing happened to her. I mean, how many, I seen a guy, this guy is an architect major, or he's in his master's program in architecture. White lady said, I think somebody's stealing the car. He got to get in his own car, so he get his ass whooped for getting in his own car. And so that's what trauma does to you. You don't want to think about anything. I mean, we lived through Rizzo, Daley. I mean, these guys traumatized the whole fucking city. They were known crooks. Rizzo failed the lie detector test.
It's 2:00.
It's 2:00. You can go forever, but
I know. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And we said an hour, but I think since Karen is basically not next week, but, going to join us for the book, well, it'll probably be more than an hour every week because it just, there's a lot. This is a very stimulating book with jam-packed with ideas and information. Huh?
You writing your book?
Me?
Yes, you.
No, but so I'm just saying.
I got a pad I keep notes on that because I would like to give this to Janae. She's 13. Maybe next year she might want to read it.
Oh, you said, do I write in my book? Oh yeah, my book is a horror story. I'm not going to show you.
You don't pass them on?
Oh no.
Okay. All right. Well, not all of them. Usually I like to reread based off where my life is at. It determines sometimes how I interpret the book. So I like to have, but I think this would be nice for Janae to read it. And then I have The Fire. Next time. I got a couple other ones. I said, well, then read this book. They're short. That's a short book. I don't think it's 200 pages. I really don't think it's paperback. It's an easy read. So I don't think it's 200 pages. She can get that. The Black Bourgeoisie, she can read that.
How old is she?
She's 13.
Yeah, there's so much age appropriate literature for Black folks these days. This might not be, I don't know where she is, but I'll send you a link so that you can see some stuff that might be better for that age range.
Okay, all right, do it because she reads. When she comes by, she doesn't always bring a book. And if I sit down and start reading, what are you reading, Papa? And then I tell her what I'm reading, and then she'll go up to her room, and then the little kids' books up there. And I ain't just getting them to buy you a book for this day and a half you're gonna be down here with me, and then you're not gonna read it. And before that, I did not have anything. I got Soul on Ice. I got some books that were for me in the early 70s and whatnot were changing for my life. I got the autobiography of Malcolm X. That's a great read. As far as I'm concerned, a great read. 17, maybe she can, dig into that one. There's a bunch of
the world has changed so much. In terms of literature for young people. Since we were that age.
When we were that age, I went from nothing to Soul on Ice, and autobiography of Malcolm X, a few other ones that they were the ones there. And then you're like, wow, I've been, where was I at? Where was I at? And you thought, you knew something. I'm telling you, it wasn't until I was out of college that I heard anything about Black Wall Street. And I got a picture on my wall here about Black Wall Street. And I said, geez, oh man, what was going on? They literally didn't tell us. So that's the lie. that was the lie. So for somebody, and if we don't get guys like
even the people that lived in that Tulsa community, they have been saying recently they didn't learn about, the Tulsa massacre. They didn't know nothing about Black Wall Street. They didn't know none of this stuff
because their grandparents,
because of the trauma.
The trauma, you got it. The trauma, because there was people that knew. It was like anything else. Hey, Shell, you know what happened up there, right? Okay, and me and you would just kind of nod and keep walking, but you couldn't tell your grand because you were protecting your grands. You were protecting them. It was one of those. Why everybody at the church on Tuesday night? They was having a service, but it was really sneaky peach. It was like, we can't go too.
So now 100 years out, Americans are acting like it's a new discovery.
Right. No, it was always there. It was always there. Rosewood, Florida. I mean, this thing was literally in the newspaper. They're killing blacks. And it was on the radio like it was announcement killing blacks in Rosewood, Florida. It was just open season on black day. And it's always like Emmett Till. I think he whistled at a white woman. White pussy ain't that good. So, I mean, it just, take my word for it.
Your word for it.
But my point is, it was always there. We knew about it. We knew about secrets that white folks had against white folks because we were usually there to clean up their mess.
Okay.
So it was always those little dark secrets. And then you were traumatized and then you were brutalized if you said anything.
Right. Right.
Had a little too much bathtub gin and you start talking about that baby that died because the girl that was underage that Master Bob ended up pregnating, and then you talking about it. Now you get a beat down. Here you go. All right, Shell, I'm gonna get out of here. Got a couple more things.
Okay.
And enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in a week. Now, how far we want to? I'll probably have the chapter finished. I don't see no difficulty finish that because I'll read a little tonight, and I'll be good to go.
Yeah, and you're gonna do the questions right for next week.
Yeah, I'll do the questions.
Okay.
All right, kid.
All right. See you later.
All right.
Bye.